Are you prepared for a 30% drop in sales? Are you prepared for an employee leaving, maybe a key employee? These are all things that the more that you prepare for them, the less they will impact your business. The good news is you don't have to live in fear. You can be prepared for, even if it's a mild recession that happens, any sort of economic problem. We've all been through COVID at this point, so we all know things can pop up without warning, and you can be prepared for them, so don't worry. The first thing that you can do to prepare is diversify your revenue. And this can look like very different depending on what kind of company that you are. For instance, I used to own a coffee shop, and let's use COVID as the example here, because when we suddenly had to be shut down, there was luckily a couple of things that we had already put into place that made that transition a lot easier, and I wasn't scrambling at the last minute. So for instance, app ordering suddenly became the only way that anyone could order food. So having those things already set up, I was like day one ready to adjust to anybody being able to order in multiple different ways. Let's say that you own an agency, a marketing agency. So you might have one line where it's like all video content. Another option that you could add that would be a similar or the same target market, but maybe a slightly different customer, would be to add Google Ads as something that you can add as another service to diversify your revenue. Because even though the same company might need different services, chances are you're going to be able to attract more clients using different revenue sources. It also means that you are diversifying and you don't have all of your eggs in one basket with a single client. Now, the second one is one that we all know, and that is just to make sure that you have a stocked savings account. So what that means is, like, during your busy seasons, you are setting aside plenty of money, whatever that number may be to you, so that you are not only like spending every dollar that comes in, you are setting some aside for the slower season. Most businesses have slower season anyway, but being able to set aside those funds when they're coming in, that sets you up for not only the slow season, but if something were to happen, and let's say that busy season isn't as busy as it normally is, you can weather that storm a little bit longer. Another point that you want to know, another data point, is your break even. And your break even can fluctuate based on your sales per month. But what you do want to know is, what are your average operating expenses for what amount of money do you have to bring in, regardless of whether you have a sale or not? Let's say that you have an office with a bookkeeper and a couple of salespeople and all of those things that are overhead costs that you have to pay, rent, utilities, all of those things are things that have to be paid regardless of whether you're making any money or not. And knowing your break even for those helps you calculate how much money that you actually need to bring in. Because then point two with that, so you have your first break even as far as operating expenses, but then if you know that your COGS are 50% of your revenue, and you have a profit margin of 50% on your COGS, you need to add that. So let's say you have $10,000 in operating expenses. So in your COGS are at 50%. So I'm going to try to do this math in my head right now. So $10,000, you have to pay that before there's any money coming in, which means that you need to have $20,000 in revenue for the month just to break even. So that means that of your $20,000 that you brought in, $10,000 went to the COGS and the other $10,000 went to your operating expenses. And there's your break-even point. From there, any point above that $20,000, you are making 50% of in profit. So that will be like your stair-stepped break-even. Another thing to do is to really hone in on your expenses. Make sure that you are using a fine-tooth comb to go through your expenses, at least on a quarterly basis, to see where there may be some waste. Maybe you have something set up on an auto pay that you have forgotten about and you don't use it anymore. Maybe you are running Google ads that are not performing. Maybe you have an employee that's not really pulling their weight and they can be replaced with somebody that is better or more efficient. So these are things that you just want to be constantly keeping an eye on throughout the year. Final piece to this is you want to stress test your financials. Here's what I mean by that. You want to run some scenarios. Like if your sales dropped to $10,000 per month, how many months can you actually survive on? And if you are out of business within 2 weeks with a 50% drop in sales, then you really need to be buffering your savings, probably more than you feel comfortable with, because you are not in a position to be able to withstand in really any sort of downturn in your sales. Now, if this is something that's like not an easy thing to do in day one, but having it in place, setting up some automatic savings or automations in order to make your saving or long-term goals attainable will make your business able to weather any sort of downturn that may happen. Resilience starts with knowing your numbers. We have talked about that, knowing all the different things that you need to do in order to be able to weather a downturn in the economy. But next week, we'll talk about your pricing strategy to make sure that you are pricing yourself so that you can actually have some profit in your pricing. So see you next week.